Hi. Okay, so I want to keep talking about shame. I jotted down some notes because shame is really tricky, and I've been working on this for a long time. This is I think one of my biggest problems left still is shame. Shame around chronic illness, shame around my story, shame around what happened, shame around my illness, shame around everything. And I want to give you guys out there, if anyone's listening, some encouragement to say, like, it's okay. You know, everybody who deals with chronic illness and who deals with a severe illness of any kind has shame. I mean, it's a huge thing. And I think that I was writing down some things here, like, you know, I know for sure that I feel shame because I feel like people are looking at me, they're judging me, they are rejecting me, they are not understanding me, I'm not fitting in with them, and maybe on a level that they just don't care enough that I'm not important on any level, that I'm not worth it, I'm not important, and that they'll abandon me. And in many cases that's because, you know, what's happened with my illness is that I have been hurt, abandoned. You know, I've lost everyone important to me. I've lost my friends and my family. I basically lost everyone that I cared about and loved. And you feel like this sense of like, oh my gosh, I'm so sick. People should be coming out of the woodwork. People should be caring about me. People should be concerned about me. People should be there. The people that I loved, that I always thought would be there, you know, were not there for me. We're not there. And I don't think it's because they don't love me. I did for a long time. You know, it was like to me, it was like watching a funeral. It was like your worst nightmare. It was almost as if I had died and I was watching my own funeral and nobody came. Nobody cared. Nobody was there. Nobody said anything nice about me. You know, it was just a few people, a handful of people, my father, my husband, you know, who didn't leave me. So can you imagine just having two people standing at your funeral? It sort of would make you feel like your life was nothing, like you meant nothing to anyone, you did nothing of value, and you didn't matter. Your life on this earth didn't matter. And that's the feeling I felt when I had an illness, an acute illness that turned chronic, and I saw people leave one by one by one. It was literally like watching a funeral and seeing nobody there. You know, so it's a very, 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 and I'm gonna cry because it is very, you feel, and suddenly you felt like you had so much value in this world. You felt important. You felt like you were a good, kind, loving person. You felt like you had good friends, good family. You know, that the people, if you got cancer, if you got some terrible disease, people would be there for you. People would come. And I think people do come. I watched people come far and wide. I watched people send presents, gifts, cards. You know, for my mom who had cancer before she died, I watched people rally. I watched people run the races. I watched people donate their money to cancer. I watched, you know, everybody come out. But when it's a disease or a chronic illness that people don't understand, you watch everybody, you know, vanish, and I feel like what it must have felt like, you know, to have the plague back in the day where you're contagious, you have no value, people want to avoid you and shun you. And, you know, living with chronic illness can be very, very shameful. And, you know, I think that in this world, all we really want is connection. We want to feel connection. I mean, that's what life's about. It's connecting with our family, our friends, our loved ones, making a difference in the world, having a life of value. And you want that for yourself. That is what you've worked your whole life to have, those things around you. And when you have this chronic illness, everything, it just falls apart. Your world falls apart. This isn't what you worked for. This isn't what you wanted, you know, and you suddenly don't fit in. You're suddenly rejected. You're judged. You're not understood. And you feel like you need to hide. You feel like you can't tell your story. You feel like either you can't tell your story because nobody will understand, because your story is so filled with things that people couldn't possibly imagine, people couldn't possibly understand, and people couldn't possibly even want to listen to, that you won't fit in anymore. They will reject you outright. They will judge you, and they will make you feel like your life is basically worthless and that you are worth nothing. So I think that if you're a person who feels great shame around your illness, that means that you're a person with a great moral compass. It means that you're a person who cares about what other people think. You want to do good in the world. You want to bring a life of value. You have high moral standards. You have a vision for your life that isn't being fulfilled. You are a good person. And, you know, this has destroyed what you wanted for your life, but you still have that value. You want, you know, you want these things. And so that should give you some comfort. You are a person with high moral values and a good value and a good heart. You feel things deeply. Otherwise, you wouldn't care what anyone thought of you. You feel things deeply and you're a good person. So let that serve you and let that remind you that although your situation has changed, your insides, your soul has not changed. And people are usually afraid. The reason that they abandon you is because they're afraid. They don't know what to say. They don't know how to ask. You know, it's tough to sit with somebody's story that is painful, because we want joy and happiness and love and all the good things. And people don't like to sit around, you know, with the falls. You know, everybody loves a good comeback story, but nobody loves the person who's down, you know, on the ground. Nobody loves you when you're on the ground, when you're as low as you can go. That's not when people want to gather around and hear your story. They really only want to hear your story when, you know, it's a redemption story, when they can feel good about listening to it because they know that there is a happy ending. And I think that's one of the things why I don't share my story, why I haven't shared my story, because, you know, not knowing yet if there's a happy ending, not feeling worthy enough to tell it because I'm not completely all the way healed, and, you know, still having shame around my story. And I always feel that if I can be completely 100% healed, if I can heal everything, I can walk into any room with my head held up high, tell my story, I will be understood, and it's a story that people will want to listen to because there is, you know, a fall from grace and a redemption. And that's really what people want in the end, is a redemption. But without that story of redemption, you know, you become afraid and you live within that shame. And you sort of, at least I do, I know I say, I don't want to let you see me, all the pieces of me, all the things that I've thought, all the things that I've been through, all the horrors of illness, all the deep, dark thoughts of, you know, wanting to not be alive, wanting to take my own life because the pain and the illness is so excruciating that you want to hide those parts, because how can you tell anyone that unless you're completely never feel that way again. So I know in my case, I say I can't let you see me because I fear that you will reject me, you'll judge me, I won't fit in anymore, you won't understand me, you won't see the real me, and if you do, you won't care enough about me to stick around. This story is too painful for you to sit with. So, you know, connection gives meaning to our lives, so we have to tell ourselves that we are important. Our stories are important. Our stories, we're here to tell stories in this world. We're here to tell and show ourselves to the world. That's why we're here. We want to leave a legacy. We want to leave a life of value. We want to leave a life of meaning. And sometimes we can't wait until we get to that point, you know, to share of the redemption, to share our stories. The more that we don't talk about our shame, the more shame we have. I know that for sure. So one of the things that I think that you need to do if you're living with shame, one of the first steps is to admit that you're not perfect, admit that you can't control this, that you're not God, admit that you have you know, no control over your healing path and your healing journey. Admit that you don't know everything, admit that you need help from others, and admit that you still want to be loved, that you need love, even though you push other people away because you don't think that they can love you in this state. So I've written a couple things down here. Some of the things I've written down was that most of the shame that I feel is with people that I actually care about. Family, people, families, aunts, uncles, cousins, people who are close to me, but who once did think highly of me, who once did love me, who once hugged me, and who once thought of me in a good light, who once saw the real me, the me that I wanted people to see. And so, and these friends, good acquaintances, people I would have over to my house, people that I would meet in the grocery stores, people in the community, people, people who saw, I think, the things in me that I wanted them to see. And then when you get the chronic illness and you lose them, you realize that shame is really about not being able to tell your story to the people that you care about most, or people that you want to like you, or people that you're friends with, or acquaintances, and you feel like you have to hide your story and you have to hide yourself, from them, because they might look down on you, they might not understand, and they might not love you, and you may have tried to tell your story to a few of these people and they have rejected you, they have not understood, or they have walked away. And so that leads to feeling this way and feeling like everybody will feel that way. So one of the things that I really feel, you have to work on your shame, you have to work on loving yourself, you have to work on putting yourself in the position, what if this happened to one of your family members, one of your aunts and uncles, or cousins, or friends? Even if they weren't your best friend or the closest person to you, what would you think of them? And if they told you, trusted you enough to tell you their story, how would you respond? You probably would respond by listening and being empathetic and caring and saying, it's not your fault, I'm here for you, what can I do? You probably would respond, but I already know you would respond because you are a person who cares about what other people think. You want to do the right thing, you want to be liked, you have high moral standards, so you would react in a certain way. So you haven't given all the people the whole truth of your story, the whole truth of your illness, so how can you sit in judgment of them and say that they wouldn't understand and they would reject you and they would do all these terrible things? Maybe that's not true. So you have to open your mind up to say, if you are too afraid to share it all, then that's not their fault. They didn't reject you. You held back. You didn't open up. So the one thing that you could do is you could try sharing your story, even with a stranger, then with an acquaintance. Maybe work your way up. Maybe somebody really close to you who loves you unconditionally and who won't shun you. And then it's those people in the middle who they like you, they love you, but it's not that unconditional feeling that you have with them. They're the people that you usually fear the most. So I think the whole equation is that you have to give yourself the love, you have to give yourself the self-talk and love yourself and tell yourself it's okay and be with yourself and promise yourself that you will never abandon your own self, no matter how bad that gets. And then if other people, if the worst comes true, then you still have yourself. You have yourself to wrap your arms around yourself and be there. And the more you talk about shame, the less you will feel it. So that is one thing. And I think the antidote to shame is courage. So I think we have to try to practice more courage, more bravery, and also self-love. So courage to share and self-love to love yourself in spite of everything. So I know shame is a tough one. It is one that keeps us down in chronic illness. It is one that keeps the negative spiral. It keeps us not connected to people. It keeps us from healing. And so that is something that even if you can't work on all the other things, you can work on shame, because it will be there at the heart of something that is stopping you from healing. And I think you need to have courage and self-love. So go forth and with courage and love.